Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. And we are live here at Parental Advisory. Today we're talking about attorney-client privilege. And sometimes I think it means people don't understand exactly what that means.
There's a lot of confusion on it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes.
So the super dry definition is an American legal concept that protects certain communications between a client and his or her attorney and prevents the attorney from being compelled to testify to those communications in court.
Did you quote Wikipedia for
did.
that? I did.
Yes, that's usually how I open the show.
Because that's what I just read on Wikipedia, too. I'm like, let me just make sure I'm not forgetting something important.
What do you think it means?
There it is. Yeah, Wikipedia.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So the attorney-client privilege. So it's so that your attorney, you can tell your attorney what happened, and he won't divulge it and spill the beans on you.
Right.
Now and I can tell you from a criminal aspect, usually you don't know. It doesn't really work that way anyway. A client never really tells you the bad stuff when you're dealing with the actual person who murdered or
because you've dealt with some murderers,
right? Yeah,
and they never were like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I did it because the guy had it coming, or because that guy was a punk and I had to clear my name. It's not like that at all, because that's not how it goes. Because you really don't care what happened. You really don't care what happened. You start your interview off when you're talking with someone. It's just like, hey, just tell me your story. Tell me what happened, and they're going to tell you a story, and that's about as much as you want to know. And then you say, okay, you take a look at their story, and then you take a look at the evidence the state has, and you say, well, you told me this in your story, but I'm looking at what the state has, and this is what sort of conflicts with it. Can you explain why you would say this and they have that? And then there would be some sort of, well, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, that's going to be a really hard thing to explain away. So maybe this is going to be a difficult area. You never really go ahead and I don't want to know. As a defense attorney, I don't want to know if you did it or not.
Yeah.
That's not really how it works, and no one ever tells you anyway. You just want to know, what is the state alleging and what are you claiming? So that's sort of how it works. And, and if you don't, because the thing is that attorney-client privilege can be breached by if the client is trying to further the conspiracy and you're helping them.
Right. So from what I read, it says the mere fact that the practitioner is an attorney will not create a valid attorney-client privilege with respect to communication. For example, if it involves business or accounting advice rather than legal advice. So just having, if you give somebody business...
Which is always strange, too, because I would say all business advice is legal advice. It's all affecting your property rights, so isn't that law? But anyway, it's always funny how they mark that line between legal and business, because it's sort of all tied together. Everything's all tied together. And then also the IRS says that, well, if a tax attorney is doing tax preparation, that's mere tax preparation and isn't protected. That's all they say, mere.
Yes, it says in the U.S., communication between accountants and their clients are usually not privileged. A person with aggressive tax strategies or who's worried about accusations of questionable accounting, such as tax evasion, may decide to work only with an attorney or an accountant who's also an attorney.
But that is also misleading.
How so?
Because if you're breaking the law, it doesn't protect you. Just hiring an attorney, there's no magic wand. If you are trying to evade taxes or even trying to just commit a fraud against a non-government actor, that privilege is blown. It doesn't work like that. The purpose of the privilege is to foster honest communications with an attorney and client regarding the past.
Right.
Okay, that's what it's really about. So when you're doing planning, nothing has happened yet. Don't you see the complete difference? It's supposed to say, well, we want people to feel like they can get the representation they deserve. And in order for that, they have to feel comfortable telling a complete stranger all the bad things that they did. And then they can kind of formulate a strategy, because if they can't speak, then the attorney doesn't know, well, geez, I don't know where to start with this. I can't give this person adequate defense, because oftentimes defendants have misconstrue the law completely. There's people who think they're going to jail who are not, and then there's people who feel that no, I can't, no, that I didn't do anything wrong, and then they're surprised that, well, actually the law considered you a conspiracy, that what you did was a conspiracy because you you picked somebody up after the crime and you knew they were part of the crime and you picked them up and now they're charging you with it.
Oh.
And so people get surprised. They don't know. So it's very important that people feel that they can communicate the past. And that's what it's really about.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's why, and also it applies when people are very nervous when they call our office. Ooh, very nervous, and rightly so. I mean, there are, I was just talking to somebody today who hired, I think, some tax-something-attorneys.com was the name of the place. They had I can't remember the name, attorneys.com.
That doesn't necessarily guarantee they're attorneys.
They're not attorneys.
Oh, they're not? Oh,
I'm like, oh, God.
Oh, no.
They bought the URL. There's no check. GoDaddy doesn't check. And so they're calling this place thinking, well, you said attorney in your domain name.
God.
Your whole logo said that. You're not attorneys at all. There is no attorney-client privilege because there's no attorney domain name client privilege.
Oh my God.
It happens a lot. Like there are just these really horrible outfits that pose as attorneys, and they can't handle simple cases,
right?
And complicated cases. They're certainly well out of their mind.
So if somebody does call here before they even hire you, is there?
Yes, there is.
There is.
There is an attorney-client privilege that attaches immediately. You don't have to hire us.
Yep.
So your name, the fact that you called, is nobody's business. There is nobody. We're not going to say anything.
Right.
And you give us any documents, if you don't become a client, they're shredded or returned to you.
Right.
They go away.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that is nobody's business.
And that's true if you contact any attorney's office.
Any attorney at all. And any attorney, even if you talk to, because people aren't talking to me, they're talking to one of our intake, my wife, or maybe Ashley or somebody else. It still attaches to them, even though they're not attorneys. You're calling a law firm.
Okay.
And so that's why you're clear. And you can contact any attorney if it's for the purpose of seeking legal advice.
Yep.
That privilege is intact.
That's really good to know in case I ever have to call.
There's not, $1 doesn't have to be exchanged. There's no representation, and if somebody's and there's scummy things that go on. People say, well, hey, look, in order to protect this attorney-client privilege, you better sign this representation agreement right now and give me $1,000. Otherwise, they could come and I could testify against them. And I mean, there's really horrible things that happen.
And then what about, so say, for instance, the gentleman that called this morning called the attorney's office that's not actually an attorney's office. Can they then take his information and use it because there's no attorney-client privilege? I don't see that.
Well, they can't disclose. I mean, there's privacy laws that would attach, but if the IRS wanted to see, hey, what did he tell you? They could testify.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, completely testify. And that's why when you are, you never know who the IRS decides to charge with a crime and what your criminal intent was. We've talked about this before. The really, really bad guys nobody wants to go after because of the car bombs. If you go after somebody really nasty, they'll poison you with polonium and bomb your car.
Go after your family.
Cut off your horse, put its head in your bed while you're sleeping next to it. So those aren't really the people you want to go after. You have to go after a little softer targets, and those soft targets are what's an easy case to prove.
Yep.
And we've talked before about a case of an attorney in San Diego who testified against his own clients. And that testimony may not have been true. And I have an email chain where he admits as much to me that he lied under oath because he was afraid of the Department of Justice and he had his deal. And so he invented testimony. That's what's so baffling is that this seems like the perfect case where the attorney-client privilege should attach, because it's talking about something that happened in the past and the advice an attorney gave, and the claim, I suppose, is that, well, it was part of the criminal conspiracy, therefore it's not protected by the attorney-client privilege, which is true, but there was no conviction of tax evasion yet. This is what the entire trial was. So they're presupposing a criminal conspiracy, but that's what the jury is there for, to see if there was a criminal conspiracy. So by allowing him to testify, they found the defendants guilty before they were guilty. And that's what's really obnoxious.
Yeah.
Is your head spinning on that one?
It really is.
Yeah, it will then make you vomit afterwards after you see what happened. And so here's a protection that's supposed to apply and completely misserved. And I think that goes to show that if the Department of Justice wants something, they're going to get it. They really are going to get it. You really need to have strong defenses. Even where you do have a strong defense, don't count it as defense. And I think in our next section where we'll talk about is people who claim that they can, they're going to create these magic wand force fields.
Yes, loopholes.
Loopholes.
The IRS didn't think of.
They didn't know about this. We have our loopholes.
Before we go to break, let me ask you quickly, if somebody does find a website where it says blah, 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 attorney, how do you verify if someone actually is an attorney?
Well, okay, every attorney has to be licensed by a state.
Okay.
There is no U.S. Board of Attorneys. It doesn't work like that.
Yep.
They have to be licensed by a state. It should say where they're licensed.
And then you could just Google that.
Yeah, you look, their website should say, licensed to practice, like I'm licensed to practice in Connecticut and Vermont. And that's all you need to practice federal law anywhere around.
Okay.
And so they have to be licensed by a state. And I'm just trying to think if there's an exception for the District of Columbia. I know there's a lot of attorneys who get their DC admittance, but usually I don't know if you can have a DC admittance only. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I'm confused about. There might be that, but any attorney can get a DC by writing a check. And it doesn't matter what state they're in. They could be in a completely different state. That counts as an attorney.
Gotcha. All right, so one quick break, and after that, we're going to come back and talk about if somebody actually did find a loophole to trick the IRS.
Claudine, would you believe that there is always going to be somebody who charges less than IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn?
I guess, but isn't it important that the problem be fixed once and be done correctly?
How about having your filings done as accurately and completely as possible?
Isn't it important that we anticipate the wrong things the IRS may do and have an action plan in place to fix them?
Do you want to feel emotionally secure throughout the whole process?
Do you want to ensure that you aren't billed for communicating with us?
Is it important that you can exchange documents securely with your law firm?
Is it important to you that your tax filings not be blown up years down the road when the IRS discovers sloppy mistakes?
Do you want a law firm that will anticipate the mistakes you might make and educate you on how to avoid having an IRS problem ever again?
Do you want someone that's on your side?
Do you want someone who will treat you with respect and know that we are with you till the end?
Is it important to know that any legal work is guaranteed and warranted?
Is it important to know that we give a shit?
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. It's fantastic. All right, so we're back today talking about attorney-client privilege, and we're saying the name, Sovereign Bank?
We are going to say the name, Sovereign
right.
Offshore Bank.
So it looks like Panama City is another city we can't visit. Thailand and Panama City. Cross them off.
Panama is, Panama City is Florida, right? Or no, is there a Panama City in Panama? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Sovereign Management and Legal of Panama City had this on their webpage. Now, this was as of January 2015. We looked, it looks like they've redesigned the website.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty in-depth website, so I'd actually like to click around a little more and see if it's hidden somewhere. Mm-hmm. But may I tell you what it said?
Yes.
Quote, one of the advantages of using Sovereign for all of your offshore needs is that we can offer a one-stop shop, all protected via attorney-client confidentiality. Unlike other smaller offshore firms in our industry, we offer complete privacy because we offer all of our services from in-house. Offshore incorporations, offshore investment brokerage services, offshore banking introductions, etc., can all be done under one roof without going through several different firms, thus keeping all of your information confidential and private. In addition to Panama's strict business and banking privacy laws, you're protected by attorney-client privilege since all of your personal information will be closely guarded by our law firm. Additionally, our lawyers are well suited to act as an efficient buffer between clients and certain offshore assets from which, for asset protection and privacy reasons, clients need to be at a safe, quote, arm's length. That was almost too good. I feel like I did a commercial for them.
That was, yeah.
Asterisk, I don't believe any of that.
I remember when I copied and pasted that and posted that into an article in January, and I actually am surprised about how bold and how misleading that crap is. And I guess there's a reason why you can't find it on their website anymore. Somebody must have said, whoa, dude, that's a little too much. Whoa. There's things that you write in email, and then there's things you phone call.
Yes.
Maybe that's something in person to make sure. That's something you say in person because it's a complete lie and will get somebody into trouble. And the fact that somebody hired that is there's your motive. You want to prove that someone had an intent to evade taxes. Oh, I see you went to this web page.
Yes.
Okay. And also that you noticed that. Oh, let me just double check. You know what? I'm going to even, and I know it wasn't true at the time.
Clients need to be at a safe arm's length.
Let me just check something right now.
Okay.
That is Offshore. Okay, they finally did. Okay, they do have a secured connection now.
You're saying they didn't?
They didn't before. They were just HTTP. And now they do. They did add the secured. So that means, and then we have that on our site, and it's important because you don't want anyone intercepting to see where you're going around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did revamp their website a lot. Now they only infer.
Maybe they read your blog.
Maybe now they're only inferring the fact that they're going to help you evade taxes, not outright come out and say it.
Yeah, they do infer quite a bit.
Yeah.
Still.
So they're still really there. It just doesn't work, guys.
No.
I mean, this is the thing. I don't care what they say about what Panama law is. The Department of Justice isn't going to give.
No.
Whoa, that's against Panama law.
Oh, man.
Wow. You got us there, guys. Wow, we're going to stop everything we're going to do here because of Panamanian law. And I don't mean to discount it, but really, the U.S. is the biggest bully in the world. They don't care. That's not going to stop them. The attorney-client, and then they're talking about Panama's secrecy laws. Well, let's talk about Swiss secrecy laws. How are those working out? What's that list up to? The list of banks, I think we roasted, because Switzerland was the other place you go where there was great bank secrecy laws. And I think on last Thursday, I wrote an article. There's 3 more banks, Swiss banks blacklisted, which was, and then earlier in the week, I had another post with 3 more Swiss banks have disclosed all the information, everything.
Yep.
There were attorneys there, I'm sure. There were bank secrecy laws. But guess what? The IRS wanted the information, and they started saying, well, that's all right. You know what we could do is we could start looking at you people there and maybe start charging you guys criminally, and we'll bring it back to the U.S. How do you feel about staying in a U.S. Supermax? How do you feel about that? Oh, okay, you're going to give us that list then, huh? Yeah, I thought you would. Everybody will everybody saves their own skin. And there you are responding to their responding to their marketing message about, use us because nobody's going to find you. They got you. They got you. And now they're going to be testifying against you. But what about that attorney-client privilege?
No. It's not a barrier for illegal activity.
No, and it's not. Even if it was, if it was, I wouldn't count on it all that much. They just want it. This is the focus. This is the focus of the Department of Justice. This is their hot story. This is what gets them press releases to offset their bad press releases about how many fraudulent tax refunds are given. This is what they need to say, look, we're about fairness and cracking down on people evading taxes. It's just, and it is so bold. I was surprised when I found that. I was like, no way, this can't be the right.
You just stumbled on that?
Right. Well, I was looking at their website because I'm like, Sovereign, who are, I'm like, all right, let me see what they're doing. And because it's just, and then their logo still says Sovereign Management and Legal Limited. Okay. Okay. That's not a U.S. attorney. Okay. They can call them whatever they want. I mean, I guess you could say if you have a legal printing company, right? There's a great one in Rutland, Vermont, Tuttle Legal Printing. We use them for a lot of our paperwork. They do a great job.
Yep.
Wow. Hey, guys.
Those lawyers can print like God, nobody else.
That was the legal printing department.
All right. So what I want to talk about after the next break is this will have an impact. They have some John Doe summons happening
right.
because of this. And John Doe summons they've happened a few times in the past. And that sort of was part of what happened that blew the top off the Swiss banks. So let's learn a little bit more about John Doe summons right after this. The IRS takes us serious because we are serious.
We've earned our reputation, and we will protect our reputation.
The IRS knows exactly who we are.
We're full-time advocates, not part-time middlemen.
We are creative problem solvers, not dull form fillers.
We're lawyers, the others, they're not.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. We're back live on Parental Advisory. We're talking today about the attorney-client privilege, and we talked about Sovereign Management and Legal of Panama City that tried to make it sound like they would help you legally, illegally break the law.
Exactly, right, exactly.
That's not true.
Provide the Department of Justice with the evidence they need to convict you, or at least indict you, which is really a wonderful thing to go through in your life,
right?
Is to have that indictment. Yeah.
So what they're saying now is because of this, they're did they ever actually do the John Doe summons?
They did.
They did.
And the results of those are unknown.
Oh.
And I think some of the reasons why, because a lot of people, one of the things people don't realize is that with some offshore forms, because in all these Panama banks, nothing's in your name because they go through the added protection of putting it in some alter ego company that's going to protect you. See, the IRS can find it. We put it in the name of shell company. And basically what that does is like, okay, that's wonderful, dummy, because now what happens is that because there's going to be a Form 5471 typically, and that you didn't file, because you didn't file that, the statute of limitations on assessment runs forever.
Oh, instead of
they would usually have that 3-6 year, depending on which, technically forever. But so they have statute of limitations that are running that they don't need to worry about. Like, okay, we can get to these people we could get these in 5 years and 10 years.
Yep.
These are not our immediate concern. What they're likely doing is prioritizing to see who do they need to go after first with the statutes expiring. A lot of people say, okay, they didn't find it, it should be okay. Well, not really. There's also 8938. Sean O'Connor from our tax department just told me, he said that also doesn't, if you don't file that and you're required to do so, your tax return, there's an addition that they have forever to assess you.
Wow.
Which that's the FATCA form on your individual tax return, which
These
I actually didn't know. There's always something I'm learning. Right, exactly. And most of them, most people aren't doing anything.
Right.
And I hope that we're getting that clear. This is not for the majority of our clients. These are for people who are thinking about living and investing overseas.
Right.
And when somebody's marketing you something to say, yeah, we're going to help you, just understand how this plays out, that you're found out and the people who you hired to help you do something illegally will be the first people to turn on you. Mm-hmm. That's what happens, and you will be the one left holding a bag.
And you've seen it happen.
And that's what happens every time. And they are so dishonest in what they do. Well, could you ask them that in their interview? Hey, I've been thinking about doing my banking with you guys, but I just have a question. When the Department of Justice threatens you with criminal prosecution, are you guys going to do the time, or do you think you're going to cut a deal with them that gives them evidence to convict me?
There you go.
Which one is it going to be?
A or B.
Yeah.
So John Doe summonses, investigators use it when they suspect a company may be facilitating illegal activity, but they don't know the name of the firm's clients. The summonses demand that the recipients disclose the identifying information and data. So when they do this has to be done by a federal judge.
Right.
Okay. And they can basically go to the company and start digging, and they can dig up any information. So if there was a wire transfer, if there was information sent even in snail mail, I assume,
right,
anything they can investigate to lead to you, they're allowed to look into.
Right. And I think if you just think of, DHL is big international carrier. They send it to DHL, FedEx, UPS. So basically you go to those companies and say, hey guys, give me a list of, I want all your returns that came from this address and this return address that we know is associated with Sovereign, not because they'll probably go through a step of like, well, we created a shell company to mail our stuff from. This, which we know comes from Sovereign. Anything that came from that, we want a list of where that parcel was addressed to. Jeez. And now they start running that list to see, okay, what names are popping up again and again. all right, we might give a priority to that one. When I say, okay, that might be one we're interested in. And so I haven't seen any of the press releases of those indictments, and we haven't had any calls from people from Sovereign yet. So I think those grand juries are still investigating, and they're sort of parceling out. And it's just crazy that they're still marketing, though. That's what's crazy. It's like, how can you still market doing what you do?
Yep.
The very thing you're offering is something that doesn't quite exist. Bank secrecy doesn't exist.
Right. So what I was reading, too, is coupled with a whistleblower in 2008, a John Doe summons blew the lid off the hushed world of Swiss banking.
Right.
It was due to that this is now a wide open fight for the IRS to get all your information.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's kind of odd that it was only as recent as 2008, and that prior to that, it was fairly easy. You just had to have a tolerance for risk.
Right.
Now you can't do it with any sort of, how could you put, $100 overseas and sleep that night? I wouldn't be able to.
You know what I think about too, and this is not important, but like the movies like Jason Bourne, when he would go to the Swiss bank to get all his money and his passports, and like, what are they going to do in the movies now? There's nowhere to hide your money.
The movies don't necessarily reflect reality.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, they'll still go to their Swiss banks. And most recently, September 16th, a federal court in Miami entered an order authorizing the IRS to serve a John Doe summons seeking information for the Belize Bank Limited.
Yeah.
And same thing, they actually are getting information from Bank of America and Citibank.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and Belize doesn't have a lot of U.S. persons there, but who is there tends to be more your larger fish. Belize, and so that's definitely for the IRS, for the Department of Justice, a good one to go after, because you're going to get people who don't have any political protection. Here's your passport, or here's your press release about all these people doing all these wrong things and not paying their fair share. Even though they've been, more than likely they've been gouged for the last 30 years, and now they just don't feel like paying all that. And I understand. I mean, I completely understand why people want to pay less in taxes. I agree. I think you should. I want to help you pay less in taxes.
And I actually feel bad, too, for the people that didn't think they were breaking the law. If your name ends up on a John Doe summons, they're going to assume you're guilty, pretty much.
And you know what? A surprising amount of people are not. A surprising amount of people just weren't savvy enough. They were just taking everything at face value. The guy seemed nice. I liked him. He seemed nice, and it seemed like it was fine. And I knew other people were doing it, other people I trusted. So I figured it must have been legitimate. And clearly, and this is always the thing, how was I able to do this if it was illegal? That's what people who don't break the law think. Like, but if it was illegal, how is this possible?
Right.
If you're not one who thinks about breaking the law, you don't think breaking the law is possible.
I'm right there. And what I also thought was sort of interesting, too, is if it's easier to prove otherwise if you're part of an OVD program.
Oh, yeah.
If you get the John Doe summons, you can at least go, dude, look, I mean, I'm trying.
Right. And even in those cases, just because you have a John Doe summons doesn't mean you're not, you have to go for that horrible 50% penalty. People see that like, oh my God, I read online and this attorney told me I had to pay this. There was no way around it. That's not true. It's all about your facts and circumstances, and you may have a very legitimate reason why you did. I had no idea it was my father's account. He trusted this guy. It had nothing to do with tax evasion. We really thought it was, and a lot of people do it for asset protection. Well, if I go offshore, no one can sue me. That's not true. But they at least do an asset protection, which does, that's not having anything to do with income tax evasion. If you happen to be a high income earner and you're a target for litigation, moving your stuff overseas does create an additional barrier for someone being able to collect something against you, but doesn't make it impossible. But that could be a legitimate reason. There's lots of legitimate reasons. So that when people are told by other attorneys or these other non-attorneys, oh, you got to do that 50% penalty and nothing else. It's the only way you're going to clear that up. Maybe, maybe not. I would want to know some more information. And if you were innocent, which is, or negligent, negligence still is not. Negligence does not lead to tax evasion. Okay, that is not the standard. Tax evasion requires a specific intent that you knew. Oh yeah, this is you knew, or you were. you willfully were blind to the fact that, oh, what's tax? I don't know. I don't hear it. Da, 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 da.
If you hired someone who markets that you need to be at a safe arm's length, you're more likely to be
yeah,
found
that's just
guilty
everything
of tax
about
evasion.
it. It's like they're going, think about what they're going to enter into evidence. What's the Department of Justice going to enter into evidence? They're going to have the old website the thing's called offshoreprotection.com. They're going to enter that into evidence. So did you go to this website? Is this, tell me what, well, obviously they don't, you're not going to defend you're not going to put yourself in the stand most likely, but they will enter into evidence about, are you the records of this web domain? Is this what you put in here? Yes, this is your marketing stuff. Okay, very good. And so the jury is going to see this website to say, why would this person, whoa, what is this all about?
Yep.
So you really got to think about that. I get why people don't want to pay taxes. I get why people want to have asset protection. I think they're great, but there's ways to do it. There's right ways to do it, and there's wrong ways. And if you need to put anything that infers an attorney-client privilege is going to protect something against illegal activity, that you just do not go with them. Do not. They will sell you out quick. And because there's great legitimate ways to do it. And, we did that podcast with Bill Loftus.
Bill Loftus, very knowledgeable.
We talked about, and there's other ways. And, I think that's something that we want to hit more on this podcast, is talk about the legitimate ways to lower your taxes substantially. And we have some really interesting ones coming up. And not just for, Bill was talking about for, more of the wealthy, those with maybe their 5 million or more. Well, there's a lot of people who would love to have 5 million, but their taxes keep them from getting that 5 million. And that's really where I'm going to try to focus on over the next year. That we're really going to make that the project of showing some real life examples of things you can do that are more than just setting up a 401k. Okay, that's not gonna get you where you're going.
Right.
There's a lot of better ways to do that.
Legal ways.
100% legal ways.
Working with real actual attorneys.
We're working with real attorneys who are not claiming the attorney-client privilege is more than it is.
All I can think of is the doctor from The Simpsons. What school did he go to?
Hollywood Medical School.
Hollywood Attorney School.
It was on the second floor.
Yes. Actual attorneys.
Yeah.
So what you can do is subscribe to the podcast. We've got a lot of really awesome ideas and good podcasts coming up in the future, legitimate ways to lower your taxes, along with a bevy of other awesome topics. You can always visit our Facebook page as well to give us ideas on podcasts you'd like to see in the future.
Yeah, and I would say even somebody with, if people want to, I think I have, we have a few ideas of hypothetical people looking to save money. But if you have your own idea, if you want us to go over your hypothetical situation, we'd love to do that, where you're really looking to
hey, I'm a doctor. I make this much a year. Yeah. This is where I live. I have family in Singapore.
These are my goals. I'm looking to do this, this, and this. That would really help us out, develop the content that can help people out. And I mean, really, I have no problem giving away, I guess, the secret sauce, because a lot of it's not a secret. What's hard is doing it right.
Yes.
It's just, this is what you need to do, and you need to do it correctly. You can't be sloppy, because when you're sloppy, that's when you run into problems. And when you're doing things, when you're running a business, you have to treat it like a business. When you're running a foundation, you have to treat it like a foundation. When a trust is trust. You just can't do it in name only. That doesn't work.
Right. We don't try to out IRS the IRS.
No,
we know that's not possible.
No.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on Parental Advisory. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.